Ladies and gentlemen, today we remember the liberation of the German concentration and extermination camp at Auschwitz-Birkenau 77 years ago. We look back on the worst crime against humanity ever committed, the Shoah, the murder of 6 million European Jews, and the senseless deaths of millions of others victims of the Nazi terror. They died at the hands of German officers and soldiers. They were turned against and often betrayed by former friends, colleagues, or neighbors. German civil servants decided and planned their deaths. The Wannsee Conference, which took place 80 years ago last week, reminds us of this. A genocide planned and perpetrated in cold blood. A death sentence for millions of men, women and children set out in bylaws and paragraphs. A monstrous evil presented as normality in a way that seems to defy all logic and reason. And yet here lies an important lesson. We must never stop seeing each other as what we are: friends, colleagues and neighbors, fellow human beings whose fates are intertwined on this planet that we share. The Nazi regime tried to reduce people to numbers. In the video we just saw, the numbers burned into the arms of Kitty Hart-Boxen and her mother in Auschwitz. But Kitty, her mother and the millions of others who were persecuted, tortured and killed were not numbers. They were people with hopes and dreams just like us. People with the same right to be treated with dignity and respect, and the same right to live their lives in peace and freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, 77 years is the lifespan of a generation. Soon it will be 80, 90, 100 years since the end of the Holocaust. Soon we will have to live without the testimonies of the last survivors and eyewitnesses. And yet we must not let their memory fade. We owe that to those who were murdered. We owe it to those who survived and bravely carried the burden of their painful memories. But we also owe it to ourselves. We who want to preserve our humanity by remembering our past, who want to make sure that history does not repeat itself. I say this with deep concern. Anti-Semitism, hate speech, agitation against Israel, and violence against Jews are on the rise in Germany and in many other countries around the world. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen disinformation and conspiracy theories seeping from the internet into people's minds. And we have witnessed the memory of the Holocaust being distorted on our streets, for instance by protesters against COVID measures wearing yellow stars with the word unvaccinated. So let me be very clear. Anti-Semitism has no place in our countries. Free and open societies cannot let the enemies of freedom act as they please. That is why we must combat all forms of anti-Semitism, discrimination, racism and extremism everywhere. Germany bears a special responsibility for this, and we are grateful to all of you who help us live up to this responsibility. Together with Israel, we have worked towards a recent UN resolution that condemns Holocaust denial. I can think of no greater honor than standing shoulder to shoulder with our Israeli friends on this. Last year, we worked with many of you to found a global task force against Holocaust distortion. And I'm deeply grateful to the United Nations and UNESCO for their work to spread knowledge and to fight anti-Semitism, racism and extremism all over the world. It is a fight against evil, evil that is often disguised as normality. But it is also a fight for our shared humanity. Thank you very much.
Herr Bundeskanzler, vielen Dank. Wir machen jetzt auf Englisch weiter.
Thank you, Federal Chancellor. I will continue on in English.
Editor of The Economist. Thank you for your very robust comments, powerful comments. I want to start with your comments about the Vice President's speech yesterday. You said you pushed back powerfully, as have other German politicians, and you've said Germany won't accept when outsiders interfere in German elections. But President Trump yesterday called the speech brilliant and said he agreed with it. What are the consequences for US-German relations when the American president and vice president have such a categorically different view of European democracy than you do?
I think it's important that we understand that Germany is a very strong democracy, and as a strong democracy, we are absolutely clear that the extreme right should be out of political control and out of political decision-making processes, and that there will be no cooperation with them. And we really reject any idea of cooperation between parties, other parties and these extreme right parties. I think there is a strong consensus between all relevant parties in Germany that they won't do so. I hope this will last and continue. But it is absolutely sure and necessary to say it is not others to give us the advice to cooperate with these parties which we are not working with for good reasons, especially when looking to the history of our country.
Do you think there was anything in the Vice President's speech worth reflecting on?
You mean all this very relevant discussions about Ukraine and security in Europe?
I think you've answered my question, but I mean it somewhat seriously. Was there anything in that speech which was a broadside against many aspects of Europe that you think is criticism worth reflecting on?
I think, aside of the questions we are discussing here, we should be very clear that free speech in Europe means that you are not attacking others in ways that are against legislation and laws we have in our country. And that's the case. There is no difference between the digital world and the analog world, to say it like this. And we have to be very clear that hate and all this, which is so bad for our societies, should be not the reality of public debate.
Thank you. Let's turn to the subjects that I think you hoped the Vice President would address yesterday. Let's turn first to actually defense spending, which you made some very strong points just now about what you thought needed to be the scale of defense spending and what needed to change in Germany in order to pay for it, particularly the debt brake. Will this be, you said, you said there was a majority in this country after the election. Does that mean you think it should be a condition of any coalition agreement that there should be a reform of the debt brake?
To my point, it's necessary that we change the view we have to these questions since many years. It will be absolutely impossible to finance 2% and even more without changing the debt regulation we have in Germany. It is impossible. And we helped us out of the situation with this extra fund of 100 billion, which gave us the opportunity to do the necessary investments and to have more than 2% of GDP invested into defense now. And we will be able to continue, but this fund ends in 27. And then we have to take a decision for the next future. And it will be not that we raise taxes by 30 billion. And it will be not that we cut investments into streets and railways and investments into the future of our society or in social cohesion because of doing more for defense. So it is absolutely clear that without a change in the view of looking at this debt regulation, we wouldn't be able to fulfill the request of 2%, and even we wouldn't be absolutely unable to do more. And this is the same with many other countries in Europe, and that's the reason why I said we have to rethink also in Europe the question, and my concrete proposal here is that we think that when it goes over 2%, we have to have something where our criteria of that regulation are not against spending.
Absolutely, and you echoed comments made by Ursula von der Leyen yesterday where she proposed something similar. Can I just clarify, though, both on the European side and with the debt brake, is this a permanent change? Should defence spending permanently be excluded from the debt brake?
I think it should be for a long time and possibly permanently. We have to discuss this together, but we have to be very clear, it is not for doing new pension schemes. This is something we have to afford with our own capabilities in our countries. But if you look around the world, you will not find too many countries that are able to do even that much for defense if they are not using also their chances for going to finance with sovereign bonds and the like. And so it is absolutely necessary that we are clear on this question. And I'm really a bit disgusted that we have, especially in my country, but also in other places, the idea